Good morning. Welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's inline and online worship service. I'm Erica Bartlett, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the chair of the worship committee. Our mission calls us to celebrate diversity, encourage spiritual growth, and promote social responsibility while we travel and care for the earth. Each month, Allen Avenue supports a nonprofit organization whose mission aligns with our Unitarian Universalist principles. The Share the Plate recipient for January is Maine Healthcare Action. Maine Healthcare Action is an organization that brings Maine people together to bring universal healthcare to Maine. Our healthcare system is broken and has been for a long time, even before the pandemic. Maine Healthcare Action's goal is to have the Maine legislature implement a publicly funded, equitable healthcare system for all Maine residents. To learn more about this organization, please go out to the website linked on our order of service today. And for those at home, if you're attending for the first time, please go to our website and fill out the welcome card so we can know more about you. This morning's service, The Spark of Goodness, is presented by Allen Avenue's Worship Committee. Lay-led worship is a tradition at this and many other Unitarian Universalist societies. At Allen Avenue, the Worship Committee either sponsors or presents one such service a month. On most other Sundays, worship is led by our minister, the Reverend Donna Dollum. I'd like to thank Libby Roderick for use of the song How Could Anyone, which will be our anthem. And for everyone here, we're so glad you've joined us. And now we'll center our hearts and minds with the ringing of the bell. Our call to worship words this morning are from a reflection on the first principle by Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, and to create pleasure for ourselves and others.
Good morning. My name is Denise Curry, and our chalice writing is written by Erica Hewitt. The word courage comes from the Latin cor, which means heart. The original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core. To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. This is our work as a religious community, to encourage one another, to be bold and engaging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible. With full hearts, we light this chalice, symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls. The story for all ages is called Amelia and Her Super Magical Powers. This is a story of a young girl named Amelia. Amelia was fascinated by tales of people with superpowers like Wonder Woman or magic like Harry Potter. She yearned to have powers like that so she could help people, like the boy she often saw sitting all alone at lunch, looking very sad. If I had magic powers, I could make him smile, she said to herself. And whenever she walked past the old rundown park near her house, she imagined how her magic powers could fix it up so kids would have a place to play. One night, just as Amelia was about to fall asleep, a fairy godmother came into her room. "Hello, Amelia," she said. "I'm here to help you. What have you been wishing for?" "Oh," said Amelia, "please give me some magic powers so I can make a difference." "Well," said the fairy godmother, "I'm happy to give you some magic, but Oh, thank you, cried Amelia. And with that, she fell asleep. The next morning, when Amelia woke up, she remembered what had happened the night before. She jumped out of bed, eager to get going and test out her new superpowers. As she walked to school, she realized she'd forgotten what she'd asked what she needed to do to release those powers. Say some secret words, give a sign or something, but she decided she'd figure it out as she went along. That day at lunch, she saw the same sad boy sitting by himself at lunch again. "Let me try my magic," she said, as she wiggled her fingers at him from a distance. Nothing. "Maybe I need to be closer," she thought. So she walked closer to him and he looked up at her. She couldn't help but give him a friendly smile. And when she did, his face beamed with his own huge smile. "Ha," thought Emily, "I really do have magic." "Can I join you for lunch?" she asked. "Sure," he said, smiling even bigger. The two of them laughed and talked all during lunch. She learned his name was Bobby. He'd lost his father earlier in the year, and he and his mother had moved here after that. He didn't know anyone. He was too shy to go up to kids and talk. Well, Amelia and Bobby became good friends, and Bobby smiled a lot from then on. Well, by now, Amelia was feeling pretty good about her super magic powers. How can I use them to fix up our old park, she wondered. Wiggling her fingers didn't work. She still didn't know any magic words. Maybe if I start working to clean it, something will occur to me. And so she did. She took trash bags to the park and started picking up trash that had been left there. Before long, a couple of friends came by and asked what she was doing. "I'm fixing our park so we can play in it again." That sounded like a great idea to her friends, and they began to help. Soon, other kids joined them. They picked up trash, pulled weeds, and cleaned out dead brush. Little by little, the park began to look better. When some of the parents saw the improvements, they decided to help. Some mowed the grass, others built picnic tables, and some convinced the city to buy new equipment. It was hard work, and it took many days, but they got their new park. When it was all done, the whole neighborhood had a picnic in their new park to celebrate. After the picnic, Amelia fell exhausted into bed. She was just about to fall asleep when the fairy godmother came back. "Oh, I'm so happy to see you," said Amelia. "I want to thank you for giving me all these super magic powers." "But I tried to tell you my wand was broken. I didn't give you any," said the fairy godmother. "You must have given me powers," protested Amelia. "How else could I have made Bobby happy and given our neighborhood a wonderful park?" The fairy godmother just smiled. "My dear, you did that because you possess 3 powers that you developed yourself: kindness, bravery, and determination. With those 3 things, you are making a difference." And with that, Amelia fell asleep.
Good morning. I'm Rick Kimball, a member of the worship committee. I want you to know that your worship committee has had a very busy fall. So as we began planning for this service, we thought we should keep things simple. Let's talk about the goodness in everybody, we said. And in the process, we can honor our first principle, which speaks of the worth of every individual. We can evoke the spirit of the UU hymnal song that asks, how could anybody ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? This sounded fine and easy, and we were pleased. No problem, we said, and there was no problem until we all went home and began thinking. The results of that difficult process form the basis of today's presentation. We begin with the ruminations of Erica Bartlett.
I have to admit that in the past couple of years, I've had a hard time thinking about people as being generally decent and kind. With the way the pandemic has played out, the increasing impacts of climate change, and the treatment of Indigenous peoples and people of color, it's become very easy to focus on the negatives. But a couple of things recently have helped remind me that it's not all doom and gloom. One came when I was going over old journal entries and was reminded of a time when I benefited from the kindness of a stranger. This was back in 2003 when I was in my mid-20s, and I was on my way to a family event in Brunswick. And partway there, when I was on 295, my car just stopped. The engine died, all the lights went out, and it started slowing down fast. I was able to pull over to the breakdown lane safely, but then I was rather stuck. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, although this event did convince me to get one, so I had no way to call for help. It wasn't dark yet, but it was getting there, and since it was March, it also wasn't particularly warm. As a young woman alone, this didn't seem like a good situation. I ended up getting out of my car to walk around a little to stay warm, and that's when a kind man pulled over. He asked if I needed help, and when I explained about not having a phone, he let me use his cell phone to first call AAA, and then call my brother to explain why I wouldn't be at the family event. What I also remember is how the man stayed in his car. Excuse me. Simply handing me the phone through the window to make sure he wasn't in any way threatening. It ended as well as it could, with AAA arriving before it got too dark or cold. And I was so grateful to that man, whose name I never learned, not only for his help, but for the confirmation that yes, some people are good and decent. The other reminder of that came when I recently read the Anthropocene Reviewed, Essays on a Human-Centered Planet by John Green. The book offers a series of thoughtful and often poignant essays about mostly good things to come from the human era. And the essay about the Lasko cave paintings particularly struck me. I had vaguely known that cave walls in France had ancient handprints and paintings of animals. I did not know, though, that they were discovered by 4 teenage boys in 1940, plus a dog named Robot. 2 of those boys stayed in the area after the discovery, camping outside the cave to protect the paintings. Eventually, they had to leave after enlisting in World War II, but when the war ended, those young men returned to watch over the caves. Both served as tour guides when the caves opened in 1948. The 2 were also some of the first to notice the negative effect of those tours on the paintings when the air and movement of the tourists began degrading the paintings. That's why the caves are now closed for viewing, although you can visit replicas to get a sense of them. In terms of human decency, I liked how John Green wrote about this event. He said, quote, "I confess I find it overwhelmingly hopeful that 4 kids and a dog named Robot discovered a cave containing 17,000-year-old handprints, that the 2 who could devoted themselves to the cave's protection, and that when humans became a danger to the cave's beauty, we agreed to stop going." End quote. When I think about it that way, then yes, kindness and decency prevailed to preserve the cave paintings. After all, the boys didn't have to stay to protect the cave, and people didn't have to close off access when the paintings were damaged. Reading about that also reminded me of all the people who fought to save the giant sequoias from fire this past summer, of the many medical professionals who've worked countless hours to help those with COVID, and those who perform the more everyday acts of kindness by giving an encouraging word or smile, or who stop to help strangers in need. Of course, people aren't always this way, but it's useful to me to remember how often we are. Keeping these instances in mind encourages me to live up to those examples, to strive to be my best self, and perhaps that may in turn encourage others to do the same, generating ripples of kindness to spread and brighten each other's lives.
Good morning. I'm Anna Noyes-Benoit. In planning for this meeting, as Rick discussed, I had this thought, I have a poem that I would love to use. I wonder if there's any way I could get permission from the author, because we put this up on YouTube. So I wrote to her. Her name is Naomi Shahib Nai. She's an Arab American scholar and poet. And so I wrote asking, and here's her reply, which I think got the very next morning, which I thought was wonderful. "Yes, Anna, I'm grateful. My pleasure, thanks. You're kind to ask. XOXO, Naomi." So here is Kindness by Naomi Shahab Nai. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go. Before you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out of the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. He too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness is the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must hear it till your voice catches the thread of all the cloth and you see the size of it. It is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises your head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is you I have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
Hi, my name is Susie Hubley, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. The title of my piece is Goodness with a question mark. I've always believed in the essential goodness of humans. My parents brought me up to believe in it. I've always taken my belief in that for granted, and I've been drawn to spiritual paths that hold that belief. For a while, I went to the local weekly meeting of the Religious Society of Friends, or Quakers. Though some elements of Quakerism didn't resonate with me, their belief that all of us have a sacred light within us certainly did. Later, I became a Buddhist, and that stuck. um, Partly because I was drawn to the idea that everyone's true nature is that of Buddha, the enlightened one. And as UUs, we are asked to respect and uphold the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In Buddhist classes, I was told that the sun is always there, even in catastrophic weather. Evil may be holding court today, but basic goodness is right there too. I tested this out on 9/11. I was driving to Lewiston to my job, and out of the radio came unbearable stories of mass terror and death, and humans tumbling out of the Twin Towers. Then suddenly I heard about those who risked everything to help. The sun had managed to penetrate the clouds of toxic dust. Remembering that has sustained me through a number of things that felt hopeless. But I have to say that in the last few years, saying that humans are innately good sometimes feels like something I'm just reciting. And with the pandemic, it's been even harder to reconnect with any sense of enlightenment and or the divine in human nature. I see it in individuals, but I struggle to see it in humankind. I still want to believe it, but I hear myself thinking, is that just another feel-good story? Or maybe a way to make myself seem virtuous? Have I ever really believed deep down that humans are essentially good? If I did, wouldn't I act differently, be more careful in my everyday life to respect everyone's worth and dignity? Reflecting on all this, I think for me, it comes down to aspiring to believe in the goodness of others and myself, too. And just as important, treating everyone as if their true nature really is that of Buddha or God. Thank you.
Hi, guys. I be Rick Kimball, and guess what, guys? I's got for you a big surprise. You know that I be very wise and that I never ever tell no lies. So open up your ears and eyes and listen as I you apprise of news I has that gratifies. This world be full of nice, nice guys. Now, by guys, I mean, excuse me, by guys, I mean you might surmise all he's and she's and you's and I's, with every pronoun neath the skies. And if this offends, I'll apologize, as be the way of nice, nice guys. Like me, this guy with no surprise, no disguise, except this dratted mask that I despise. Hey, I got news that gratifies. The world be full of nice, nice guys. Just think of me, that's what you ought. I be multitudes like good old Walt. Try as you might, you'll find no fault for all of me. In every guise, be you know what? Be nice, nice guys. Now look at you. You all be neat on scales of good you can't be beat. I hates it when you says goodbyes, 'cause all of you be nice, nice guys. And all of them, and they none of them has feet of clay, they be good in them through night and day. Those anti-vaxxers be nice guys, they just watch news that truth denies. Them Jan 6ers on the DC Mall, they thought to act for good of all. Them senators with sharpened claws, they just pretending to have flaws to show they ain't above the laws. So have no doubts, no hems and haws, for nicer guys there never was. Them Republicans and Democrats, they call each other bats and rats. But they should cease from having spats and heed the news that's satisfied that all the world be nice, nice guys. That means me and it means you, so here be what we ought to do. Give up our hates, our doubts, our fears, give to no one angry leers, and swallow any thoughts of jeers. Hey, I got news that gratifies all the world be nice, nice guys. But wait, this time I think we need the truth. I got news that ain't so couth and won't go down like smooth vermouth. Because what I've claimed is sometimes not, and part of it is Tommy rot. For some guys be not really nice, committed they be to sin and vice. And maybe I seem one of they by preaching that the nice holds sway, ignoring thoughts of foul play. No, here be my real truth, truth times 3, when you and they and also me seek in others all the good that be. We let more good start growing free till the good be big as our redwood tree. Now as that goodness up and flies with just a bit of compromise, I shout new news that gratifies. The world be almost full of almost nice, nice guys. People good as apple pies, with goodness that intensifies for those with will to use their eyes to find the good in other guys. Now, watch me prove the good in me by sitting down and silent be.
As the new year begins, we'll continue to harbor the light within. Each week, we also contribute to keeping the lights on in here. 1/3 of our morning offering will be donated to Maine Healthcare Action. The offertory will now be gratefully accepted. Good morning. My name is Mike Luce. I'm a member of the Worship Committee. I entitled my piece, Consider the Alternative. So for much of my life, I've tried to hold on to the belief that we're all essentially good in our core beings. That no matter the results of the gene pool lottery or what was done to someone from prenatal development on, we all had that enduring core of good. But that belief's been seriously challenged over the last few years. Challenged so much that I've had to qualify it a bit in order to be able to hold on to it. There are some folks who seem just morally beyond the pale, who are, for whatever reason, so damaged in their very character that they can't be healed. So my qualifier of that universalist impulse is to accept that in some folks, it may be there, but this essential goodness isn't going to manifest during this lifetime in this society. My faith, at least right now, is that the universalist part will apply in the next plane of existence, or maybe the one after that, depending on what I've been taking in for news recently. If not that, then the alternative would be believing in some version of hell, and I gave that one up a while back. So there's that, but how do I keep my hope given my usually dour assessment of how things are in the here and now? Well, in the face of that, there are a whole lot of us who are doing what we can to make our corner of the world better, and who I know are going to continue in the face of whatever political or environmental consequences await us. I was reminded of that a few weeks ago at a time when I really needed it. I'd been consuming a little too much news and I hadn't even been able to write anything coherent for the worship committee's last service. Then I had a Zoom meeting with the Family Promise group of folks who were supporting a family from Angola. Here on the screen there were 8 boxes, 8 people, united by a desire to support a family in need, just as we would hope to be aided if it were us. We were sharing information, needs, who would help with getting to various places like pantries or appointments. That was like a little sip of tonic for me. It reminded me of ACT team meetings in my community mental health days. Everyone there for the right reasons, solving problems and taking care of business, working to help heal the damage caused ultimately by some of those who I was talking about a minute ago. Now, there's a little more about our family with Family Promise. That particular family all of a sudden left for Canada. I think it was immigration driven and chances for getting accepted. But we already have a new family moving into the apartment. They're there now. We will start with them soon once we know the needs and what we can do. This kind of ground level stuff is being done everywhere to meet all kinds of needs. I need those reminders that there's always a lot of that going on. Dr. King observed that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Now that can be a very comforting thought, but sometimes maybe too comforting. Right now, when it seems that the sociopaths of the world have the bit in their teeth, the rest of us need to put our backs to push the shape of that arc a little harder. What other choice do we have? I mean, consider the alternative.
And here's my take on the goodness of humanity. In my youth, Vietnam raged. I was an idealist and marched along with hundreds of thousands of others in D.C. against the war. I actually thought war could end if we just stopped fighting. Eventually, the war did end, but a horrible mass killing in Cambodia followed, and then wars, military coups, skirmishes, saber-rattling all around the world, along with more and more gun violence in our own country. Several years later, I approached my dad, a World War II vet, asking him if war could ever be eradicated. A good and wise man, but not naive, he slowly shook his head, saying he thought war was inevitable due to the nature of humankind. The clarity of this brief answer devastated me. What do you think? good versus evil in human nature. It's been the topic philosophers have mulled over for centuries. Theories have spanned from the doctrine of original sin, where we are all born broken and selfish, and our life must be spent struggling against these faults, to the notion we are born good and are innately concerned with the welfare of others. Mostly, we observe a truth to be somewhere in between. Jesus' most challenging command was to love thy neighbor. Our own first principle addresses the same challenge regarding the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Loving thy neighbor is easy if they see the world the way we see it, but if they don't, if they believe it's their business to police the world according to their morals or religion or politics, there's the rub. Can we rise to the challenge of loving our neighbors, respecting the inherent worth and dignity of everyone consistently? I confess to having a weakness in this regard, particularly concerning the political leanings of many in our times. Am I not a good person then? As I perused the web on this topic, I was excited to find a Scientific American article entitled, "Scientists Probe Human Nature and Discover We Are Good After All." Reading this study, though, I learned that if people in a series of studies were given 10 seconds or less to decide, they leaned toward being cooperative. But if they had more than 10 seconds, they tended to decide to be selfish. It was pretty disillusioning to learn that we could be good for only 10 seconds at a time. There was a wonderful film a few decades back with John Denver and George Burns called Oh God. Its ultimate premise was that we are given everything we need to make this little blue planet a place of peace and prosperity. We live in the Garden of Eden. This is it. All we have to do is be good to each other. No matter how we strive for perfection, we are all imperfect, it seems. Perhaps it is true that it is in the nature of human beings to war with each other. The Bible's second story, after all, was about a brother slaying his brother over jealousy. We can strive and strive for goodness, yet there always seems to be something counterbalancing our efforts. But I don't want you to feel disheartened. You know that saying, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. When you look around, minds, bodies, and spirits everywhere are working hard to right the wrongs in our community, our country, and our world. Even if we aren't perfect, even if we can't always love our neighbors or always feel the worth and dignity in every person, the fact that we try means we're still pretty darn good.
Good morning again. Going last, I feel like I'm repeating a lot of the same ideas that we've already heard, but I think that's a good thing because it means we're all thinking in the same way. So that there's a little bit of positivity here to end things with. The past in which it seems disaster and tragedy were on the news every night makes it hard to feel festive and often seems like a world disintegrating around us. We hope for quiet, we hope for calm, but it never seems to come. Tragedy after tragedy unfolds in front of us on the screen, on the radio, and in the newspapers. When will it ever end? We want to shut out the chaos and not live with the constant worry that there are bad people out there doing scary things to people just like us. When we are bombarded by scary images, it's difficult not to think that this is our new reality, that the world is an evil place. I couldn't help feeling this way after the January 6th insurrection, the downfall of Afghanistan, and the intentional misinformation of COVID deniers. The constant repetition of bad news made me feel like these events were the only things happening in our world. So I shut off the news. This was good for my psyche, but ignorance, which in the short term can be blissful, is in the long term naive. So how do we feel hope without being naive or blocking out bad news? How do we engage in a chaotic world? How do we know that there are good people in this world? Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers to most of us, was a fierce advocate for children and spoke often on how to talk to children during troubling, often scary times. Rogers spent much of his life learning about the ways children respond to words and images. In 1968, he addressed the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy on his show. He told parents, "I've been terribly concerned with the graphic display of violence which the mass media has been showing recently, and I plead for your protection and support of your young children. There is just so much that a very young child can take without it being overwhelming." Not only was he addressing the needs of children, but those of adults too. We can be just as overwhelmed as children. So how do we keep from getting overwhelmed? Fred Rogers tells the story. "When I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news. My mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.' To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing there are still so many helpers, so many people caring in this world." These words serve not only as a comfort to kids, but to us adults as well, a reminder to ourselves that there is still much good amidst the bad. In 2015, when I was living in Illinois, a tornado devastated Coal City, a small town about an hour and a half south of Chicago. Hundreds of homes were destroyed and many people were displaced. In a volunteer cleanup effort, I witnessed firsthand the helpers in action. These quotes are from the Chicago Tribune, which reported on the cleanup after the disaster. Coal City resident Ed Miller couldn't say thank you enough. Members of the Morris High School varsity football team moved broken fences and trees to the street from Miller's backyard Friday as he watched in awe. "I didn't have any rakes, so they picked everything up by hand," Miller said. "They asked if they could do more, and I said, 'You did enough.'" Also among the volunteers was Cameron Gibbon, age 7. Wearing red Spider-Man gloves, he came with his mother, Carrie Gibbons, and his sister, Ava. Asked why he was there, Cameron said, "Because tornadoes hurt people's houses, and they don't have any food or drink." The congregation of the Christian Life Assembly Church in the neighboring town of Diamond knew well the importance of volunteering after a catastrophe. Its church was severely damaged after the 2013 tornado swept through the area. The church members donated more than $1,300 worth of food and secured other truckloads of food donations to feed volunteers. Donna Worry, whose family owned a local hall, filled the kitchen with friends who helped prepare the donated food. Worry's grandson was among those peeling onions and prepping food. "He's got to know about helping others, and he wants to help," Worry said. Will County Emergency Manager Brenda Lutz called the cleanup event organized chaos. Her organization, which oversaw the volunteer initiative, moved an estimated 5,000 people in teams of 10 onto buses bound for specific locations. There, people combed through the neighborhoods and cornfields, picking up debris and setting aside personal items. I was there on that Friday after the storm. I have witnessed the damage of many tornadoes, but none as bad as this one. The rain after the storm had soaked the debris and the cornfields were ankle-deep in mud. It didn't look like much could be saved, yet people worked diligently, saving what they could. People want to help. 5,000 helpers in just one day. That's a lot of good in just one small corner of the world. That's the hope. When people see people hurting and they want to stop the hurt and they want to teach their children to do the same. That's why it's not naive to go into the new year with hope. Because this is a time of year of love and hope and peace. We are all born in a troubled world, but we are also born into a world of hope. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it will bend towards justice because people love and hope and help.
And our closing words are a poem from Andrew Pakula. There are miles behind you. There are miles behind you and many more ahead as you journey on toward wholeness. May all that is good and true guide your way. May the joy of love lighten every step, and the miracle that is life be ever in your sights.